They think that if we end Medicare as we know it, make it a voucher system, then somehow this is all going to lead to jobs and prosperity for everybody.
The president's idea, for instance, for Medicare was to cut it by $700 billion.
He's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
Wild and reckless accusations that disgrace the office of the presidency.
That's what he said about wind power. You can't drive a car with a windmill on it. I mean, maybe he's tried it. He's put other things on the roof.
That was a good line. That was a good line. I'm sorry, Tom. That's just a snapshot from the latest from the campaign trail, and it's getting nastier by the moment here, and we haven't even gotten to the conventions yet. Now, while most campaigns descend into a competition to see who's going to have the best soundbite, well, and I got to tell you, this to guys who do what I do, Dominic, this is a thank you. Finally here, we got a little bit of substance to this thing. The selection of Paul Ryan has ensured at least one thing, that this campaign is going to make you, the voter, have a clear choice. Two very different ideas about what the role of government ought to be. Now, Mitt's pick for VP certainly sharpened the distinctions between the two camps. Now, this now a race between two clear visions of not only what the role of government ought to be, but also two distinct visions of what America could look like here. And let's take a look at what Paul Ryan's America very well could look like. Medicare, it would be turned, as you said, into a voucher system. Seniors would have to pay out of pocket for any additional costs not covered by said voucher. Social Security, significantly, that would be cut and would even partially privatize the program. How about things like taxes? Ryan's plan, there'd be basically, it'd be very simplified. There'd be two brackets. Tax cut for top earners at 25% and 10% for others. He believes the best way to create economic growth here is to give those in the top end more money to invest into the economy. Trickle-down theories, you know the drill. Taxes be raised on those making less than 30 grand. Tom can shake his head all he wants, but it's true. And for the top end, it'll be 25%. Okay, now, this goes on here. We talk about things like Pell Grants. We'll talk about, basically individualism versus collectivism. You get the drift here. But how about regulating Wall Street? In Ryan's America, regulation, not a good thing. Dislikes it, too much red tape, doesn't like financial reform. He voted to repeal the Glass-Steagal Act. Ryan's budget, it would have dismantled key parts of the Dodd-Frank law. Recent MarketWatch article called the Ryan plan the holy grail for Wall Street. Now, if your kids get the Pell Grants, as I mentioned, to go to college, the budget drastically cut that financial aid, and in the process, millions, and I'm talking with an S, students would be off that program. If you don't do well here, Paul Ryan, that's not the particular focus of his plan. Of the 71 bills that he sponsored, only one primarily designed to combat poverty, and even that one focused on creating an economic zone that would exempt certain taxes and regulations for employers. Now, Senator Wyden, who partnered with him on some stuff, said that his Medicare plan, quote, completely pulls the rug out from under the poorest and most vulnerable citizens. Robert Greenstein, the Center for Budget Policy Priorities, said his budget plan would, quote, take food from poor and children. All right. This comes down to a worldview. He likes Ayn Rand, even though he said there's distinction between me and her as early as this year. She certainly helped shape his worldview. He says that this is somebody that he gives the books to interns because he believes in what she's got to say. Her past writings, he says, required reading if you want to work in his office. Philosophy embraces individualism, laissez-faire capitalism, and forcibly opposes collectivism. Her philosophy has strong influences when it comes to libertarianism. The theory, best captured by the quote, government help to business is just as disastrous as government persecution. The only way a government can be of service to national prosperity is by keeping its hands off. All right.
Bravo.
You know what the Obama plan basically is. You've had 4 years of it. Many of you may not like it. Many of you may think that it's ineffective, but at least you know what it is. I want to bring to the table here. Do we at least agree, guys, that there is a distinction with a difference between the two views of government from the Ryan-Romney plan and from the Obama plan?
There's no question. I mean, the Ryan plan and the demagoguery has got to go out the window right now, because if you look at the Ryan plan and if you look at the Obama Medicare plan, for instance, few Americans would know that over 10 years, the difference is 3%. That's the difference. Right now, you're going to have ads running in Florida that tell Floridians that their Medicare program is going out the window, when we know that there's a 10-year buffer from anybody age 55 or older regarding the Medicare plan.
But before you move on that, Tom, you also know what the CBO said, okay? Impartial Congressional Budget Office. They estimate in those 10 years, when we hit 2022, okay, that it's going to be on average per senior individual $6,500 that they're going to be out of pocket that they're not now.
Right. And what they don't tell you is that, and you never hear about, and when you talk about poor people under Ryan's voucher system, the poorer you are, the more increase your voucher will. So there'll be means testing on it. So if you're a rich person going to get Medicare, which you're able to do in some instances, and what you see right now with Medicare Advantage program, which 20% of seniors all have, you have Obama just stealing money and has said it as recently as a month ago. He just said it. He said in St. Louis, he said in Montana, I'm going to take $192 billion more out of Medicare Advantage, which 20% of Americans have.
You have some senior citizens that are looking at eating cat food now.
They're not affected, Dominic. They are not affected by this.
And if they're out
they're
of pocket,
not, Dominic, they are not
right
affected.
Now, but down
the road, the system will be broke because in 12 years, the system will not be collecting enough money to cover it. Who's going to pay for it in 12 years? You need cuts in the system to make it privatize it. And to say that we're going to cut Social Security is ridiculous.
You just said this where the grown-ups come in about.
Right.
You need grown-ups.
It's not about cat food. What are we making it about?
It's
well,
not.
You know,
It's ridiculous.
So if you're
honestly,
watching,
I think it's a cheap shot on old people that they're all eating cat food. We got to save the old people from the
Can I
cat
just
food.
say this, why it's not a cheap shot?
Okay.
Because under Paul Ryan, I wouldn't be sitting here right now because I wouldn't have been able to go to college. Because Pell Grants paid for me to go to college.
Oh, really?
So it's not a cheap shot.
So really, so
it's not a cheap shot.
wait a
no
second.
one's able to do anything for themselves. Thank God the federal
Here, Dominic,
government's
we
there.
can have an honest discussion about Pell Grants, and we can take the Paul Ryan budget plan and say we don't like this, we don't like this. But I'm going to give him a lot of guts because he actually put out a plan where Senate Democrats for the last 3 years have not put out a budget that we can sit down. We all took Government 101, and what it said is the House of Representatives passes a budget. The Senate passes a budget, you have conciliation, you sit down, you have a conference committee, and work out your differences. So now all we do is sit around the table, and the guy who had the guts to put out a plan, if you don't like it,
a plan
talk
that
about
will
it.
destroy America.
Guys, one second.
That's why you negotiated.
Tom, but here's my point. Let's say I give him points, and I said this last night, that at least he put out a plan. But there's two basic numbers that I don't understand how we start, and we said, Ed, where the big boys sit at the table and actually can do the math. Okay, he wants to cut taxes by $4 trillion, okay? $4 trillion. Yeah. He also wants to cut spending by $6 trillion over 10 years. So let's be big boys here and do the math. You're going to cut your revenue by $4 trillion, okay, and you're going to cut your spending by $6 trillion. Right. The spending cuts, he said, will not affect one dime of any defense spending. I think it worked out to 85% of the cuts affect the bottom third of the population. Medicaid, talking about food stamps, those get outsourced to states. Tom, you work for a state, you work for the state of New York. Are states rolling in cash right now? No. It's an unfunded mandate by definition. You're saying the most vulnerable population, you take it, you punt it, you send it to Albany, Trenton, whatever state you want, and say you pay for it. They're going to say, with what?
What did former President Bill Clinton, the Democrat, whisper to Paul Ryan in the video we've all seen? I hope the Hochul race doesn't signal to Democrats they can't deal with the Medicare issue because he knew it's going bankrupt. It's a system that does not work. And that's why today we have 48 million Americans on food stamps.
But your answer, not your answer, Paul Ryan's answer to legitimate problems of funding. By the way, want to solve Social Security? I got a lot of easy solutions to it. I don't know the conservatives are going to love it, but there are answers to our problems. They're not insurmountable. But their answer is, we're going to cut taxes beyond even historic lows on the top end. Trickle-down economics worked fantastic, didn't it? We're going to cut those taxes.
Wow.
Now, where are you going to cut?
I thought
unbelievable. 1984 was the biggest roar back in my life.
In
I
history.
still have never relived
You're
1984.
all about deficit and
so
debt,
I'm
right?
all about revenue is not tax. Revenue is not tax. One more time, what you say you're taxing in Washington is not the limit of your ability to gain revenue.
Are you a deficit hawk?
Yeah,
Do you care
look,
about debt? What happened to the national debt under Reagan? It doubled.
Because he had
I'm not-
military spending.
I
Because
guess-
Carter left the military.
First things first.
nothing.
And
so
this
when
president
you
had
have-
two more
so
than
when
he
you have-
inherited.
Look,
Which
you want to be a deficit
president?
hole, you
This
gotta have
one.
priorities.
This one.
He inherited two
Wait a
wars,
second.
no?
So you're
Inherited. He
telling me
begged
that
for this
debt went
job,
up under
please.
him because of the
Inherited.
war that he inherited,
All right.
or because of his government spending
How
on
about a
programs?
recession that was
On
borderline
that.
depression? Does that count or no?
How about economic activity? Does that count? Is any tax cutting going to
So-
bring
so
any
Richard,
economic
Richard,
activity like
Richard,
1984?
if I-
Or
Richard-
1984 didn't happen,
But wait,
right?
if I
Just W. Bush
But wait,
happened.
if I agree with you on that premise, which I'll give you that, okay? At that time, when you see that you have a burgeoning national debt, when you said during the course of your campaign, I will cut the national debt in half during my first term. In fact, he's added $5 trillion to the national debt. He didn't cut it in half. Do you then say to the American people, I'm going to institute the largest government-run program in the history of America? Is that the time to do that?
What?
That's what Obamacare is. It's
First
the
of all,
largest government.
Here's your
Dude,
problem.
I wouldn't do
Tom,
that.
Here's your problem. In one breath, you say the guy doesn't do anything. Then the next breath, you tell me that he's an activist president, does too much.
I didn't say he was an activist
I'm
president.
telling you,
Well, one thing.
I-
This
one
is
thing.
one
One
thing.
thing.
One thing that
One
I think
thing.
we can actually agree on. Two guys at the table like the idea, two guys don't. But at least we know this. Paul Ryan's plan is a radical departure from what we see now. And I only have one question to my fellow Catholic at the table.
Yeah.
This is what the Catholic bishops, hardly some liberal bleeding heart group,
Right.
said about his plan. It's going to hurt hungry kids,
Yeah.
poor families, and vulnerable seniors.
Good for them. I mean, you're the one who did the thing about how bad the Catholic Church was last week.
No,
I mean, so now
no.
we're quoting the Catholic Church as if the bishops know what's going on. Listen, the bottom line is that Americans know how to take care of themselves. And the fact
What
is
does
is
that mean? We know how to take care of ourselves.
What it means is that
somebody
we
went to the doctor
rely
before
each
Medicaid.
day too much on government. We have 1/3 of America now on a daily basis get some form of government assistance. If you think
So
that's
what's
good,
your suggestion? Time out.
what's
What's your suggestion for the food stamps?
My suggestion is that I would like the other side, instead of just calling me names and my party names, sit down at the table and say, what is your plan for the future?
I've seen the plan. The plan is...
What's the Democrats' plan? Obama had a budget that nobody voted for. What is the Democrats' plan? I don't know what it is.
Okay, here's
they haven't passed a Senate budget in 3 years.
Here's the Democrats' plan.
What is it?
And see, this is why this is all nonsense. Because Tom Doherty has one of the biggest hearts that you could ever have.
Right.
In terms of helping people.
Oh, we always do.
cold, but go ahead, yeah.
We always do.
Here's the Democrats' plan.
What is it?
People are eating cat food right now. People are being evicted as we speak. You have sheriffs that are refusing to put people out on the street because banks are foreclosing on them. And Democrats are saying,
maybe they shouldn't have bought the property.
Unbelievable. I guess there's no losers in America. Nobody loses in America.
Let me just finish
It's
my
a
thought.
carny
Let me just
game.
finish my thought.
A carny game.
Democrats
Come
are
in, you
saying
collect what you
Americans
contributed.
need help. Americans are dying. We're all going under.
Maybe
And if we listen to the Paul Ryans of the world,
Maybe
all of us are going under.
Dominic, that is such demagoguery.
This guy,
Dominic,
did
seriously.
he live off his father's Social Security? Did he live off his father's Social Security?
He's not allowed to have Social
Wait,
Security?
hold on. And this is the same
He
guy.
can't have Social
Wait,
Security?
hold on.
Well,
He didn't say
guys, no one can hear what we're
But he
saying. We're
didn't say
yelling.
he's going to cut Social
But Tom,
Security.
wait,
He said he wants to
Tom.
give me the ability to
Tom.
take my money and invest it if I'd like to. Why can't I do
This
that?
guy is a far-right person whose philosophy is pull yourself up by your bootstraps as you got the eviction notice, as you're being put out on the street.
Why were you evicted? Because you couldn't afford your mortgage that month?
No.
Maybe you shouldn't have bought the program. Because Democrats believe that
nobody went to
everyone
the
should own
doctor
a house.
before
People
Medicare?
know why people are being evicted right
Nobody
now.
went to the doctor
because they
before
don't have the
Medicare.
money to pay their
How can you go to the
mortgages.
doctor when
Because
the
they
government
lost their
doesn't help you go to the
jobs.
doctor?
Because their jobs are to China.
All right,
Because their
guys,
jobs are
That's
to
the economic
guys,
system we live in. It's a
this
free
is entertaining.
market.
I have to go to a break here.
It's a free market, for God's
We're
sake.
going to
This isn't
continue the
Cuba.
conversation at the break. Stay with us.
Give everybody a house. You can all have a house.
Oh, really? You think that's how it works?
I mean, really.